Good morning. We're here in Grant Prairie.
We are right outside of Grant Berg Gallery. If you guys were watching last year, we were here almost a year ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It would be yeah.
But we're back to interview him because we loved him so much and loved all the artwork. So yeah.
Let's go check it out.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. We are here today with Grant Berg at the Grant Berg Gallery.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, we were here last year. Beautiful art, amazing conversation. So we're super happy to be back. Thank you so much for having us back again.
And thank you for coming back to Grant Prairie too, and I appreciate you coming here.
Of course. So how has your past year, actually before I jump ahead to that, for those who maybe haven't seen your last episode, can you just speak a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Grant Berg. I'm an artist here in Grant Prairie. In my gallery, we have 55 artists. I am one of them. A little bit more about me. I am a Grant Prairie City Councillor, and prior to me opening the gallery 8 years ago, I was in broadcasting for 29 years. So it's fun being on this side of the questions.
So your past year, how has that been for you?
It's actually been quite exciting because I know last year we talked about a few things that I was working on. Some have come to fruition, some are still in development, but I finished 3 public sculptures here in Grant Prairie, 2 at the Veterans Memorial Gardens and 1 at the Grant Prairie Hospital, which is a new facility, so it was nice to be involved with that. So that I think that's the biggest project, but there's been a few others that are still ongoing.
Mm-hmm. And those projects, what are they all sculptures? Or
No, so one of them was I was working on a children's book and getting the illustrations done.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, and so that's still ongoing. It's actually taken a little bit of a twist, and one of the things that I often will talk about is the ability to adapt and to change. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're working on, and I believe I have a grant coming forward through Indigenous Tourism Canada, is to do tours here in the gallery. And part of the tour would be telling stories. And so I'm working on developing 3 stories that will include production in the backdrop. One would be on my family tree. So I'm Métis, and my aunt's a genealogist and has amazing family history going back to Joseph Frobisher, who established the Northwest Company.
Oh, wow.
And then throughout, there's some wonderful Indigenous stories, including a legendary figure, Black Bear, who was a half-brother to our lineage. And so I want to tell that story and how it influences my sculpture. There will be one on my sculpture, because I've sold most of my artwork or it's out in the public domain. Mm-hmm. When I talk about it, I have no visual, so we're going to create videos around that.
Okay.
And tell the story of the sculpture and the meaning behind it. And then the last one is developing that children's book, getting it illustrated into, I wouldn't say video, but in a storybook format digitally. Mm-hmm. And then from there, once the illustrations are done, then we can convert that into the book.
So basically what I'm hearing is you haven't had a day off since we were last here a year ago.
It's actually ironic. Yesterday, I had nothing in my schedule. And I just was telling my wife, I feel so unproductive today because I've got nothing to do. And she said, that's great. Do nothing.
Yeah.
So I did nothing.
I remember you mentioning you try to keep your Sunday mornings to yourself.
Yeah.
I hope that's still the case.
That is a strong rule that I do have. Otherwise, I know that I would burn out. Mm-hmm. And I love everything I do, and I say yes to way too many things. But I love it all. And it's just part of embracing life and everything that's wonderful with life. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, though, I need to recoup and recover. So Sunday mornings, what I do is there's no alarm, wake up when I wake up, make myself a nice big breakfast, and just relax. Quite often I'll go into my home office and listen to music And I know that time is protected, so I treasure it. And then after 12, I try to protect all of Sunday. Doesn't always work, but again, there's things that I just love to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're a great example of the fact that you can still be insanely productive and achieve quite a bit while also taking that time for yourself and having that work-life balance as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have always said I'm an introvert trained as an extrovert, and I do need that recharge time.
Mm-hmm. It's far better than just overworking yourself into nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Speaking though of your work specifically in the past year and things coming up, are you working on, well, you've mentioned kind of the projects you're working on, but in regards to your art itself, what would you say inspires your art?
I'm going to say story. I love telling stories, and I love hearing stories. So I read a lot. And there's a story behind everything. And so when I have a story in mind, I want to create that visually through a sculpture. The public sculptures that I have, they were quite specific in two of the requests, in what they wanted. So how do I best tell the story in material and in design? So I'm given actually specific themes. So from there, I have to work within that to best tell the story that they want to convey, but it's also my work.
Mm-hmm. And having that element of you alongside all the kind of stipulations that they've provided.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Would you say that Grande Prairie has influenced the stories that you tell, or how has living in Grande Prairie influenced your work?
One of the things that is great with Grande Prairie is we are relatively isolated. We're 4.5 hours from Edmonton. We are quite a hub. And for better or worse, I'm a big fish in a small pond. And so a lot of work does come my way. Where if I was in Edmonton, it would be a different scale and a different story. And I have applied for public sculpture in Edmonton and been considered, but I still haven't landed one yet. So it's a little more competitive there. But yeah, Grande Prairie is a really unique place. It thrives. I know it's got a lot of misconceptions, say, on social media, but once people get here, it's an entirely different perception. It's a modern city with amazing amenities, and I know that you've either seen them or going to see them. Wonderful activities. So, yeah, it's just a really good place. Like anyone will tell you when they come to Grande Prairie, the plan is always to come for 2 or 3 years. And I've been here 33. The deal is that when I got hired in radio, the idea is that I was staying here 2 years, and then after that they would transfer me to another station within the chain. And I never put in for that transfer. And here I am 33 years later.
And still loving it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and really wanting to grow it. One of the things that when I moved here in 1991, so I'm an old guy, is there was nothing to do other than go to a bar and listen to a DJ. And quite literally, I grew up in Edmonton, or around Edmonton, and I said, somebody needs to do something. And then I looked in the mirror and I said, Grant, get involved. You have to do something, make this community better and grow. And I'm happy to be part of making the city a better place to live.
What was that process like of thinking that the city needs more and actually going through and creating all that you've created?
Well, it's just finding things that I connected with. So I know that you're going to Stampede later this week. That was one of the first things that I did. I worked at a country station. I'll go to Stampede, and what I helped there was with their marketing, but also booking the bands because I knew the music. And so I had a lot of fun with that. But I love art and history. So I volunteered for a museum society. I'm former chairman of the Art Gallery of Grande Prairie, which, as of this interview, is Alberta's second largest public art gallery, only behind the Art Gallery of Edmonton. The Glenbow in Calgary will pass us when it's done, but for right now, we've been number 2 for about 15 years.
Wow.
And so I just follow my passions, and that's what I've always done.
quite a few passions you have. I remember when we were last year, we talked about your books
Yeah.
a bit. Are you still writing?
Oh, every single day.
Yeah.
I've started compiling the 4th book. So when you were here, I
Okay.
know that you guys went through 3 of them.
Yes.
And so, again, as I think of them or as I say these quotes, I put them into my phone, and I think I have enough for a 4th book, and maybe by Christmas we'll have one out.
Oh my goodness. Then we'll be ordering it online or making the drive back here because we still talk about your books.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
It was
yeah.
just a fun project.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing them with us because we, like traveling to these places has been incredible for us because our eyes are open to new authors, new artworks, new places, new people, and so thank you. It's been really wonderful for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, even here in the gallery, it works as a great artistic hub. We just met around Christmas. An author, and I can't remember, it's a major publishing company that he's with, and he's originally from Europe, but his wife is a doctor here in town, and so he's an internationally known author, and just love chatting with him when he comes in. So again, people that of artistic leanings come in to check out the art, and I strike up a conversation and learn more, and it's just part of a nice community.
For sure. Speaking of the gallery, what has been the biggest change over the year?
Well, what we continue to do is try to make art more accessible. That's always been part of the plan. But as we move forward, it's finding ways to get more people engaged. And part of that is public sculpture. It's free to go see in a variety of parks around the city. But also bringing in smaller things. We brought in some puzzles. For example, I think when you were last in, I don't know if we had started doing T-shirts.
You'd mentioned that was the direction you were going to go,
Yeah.
but I don't think T-shirts.
Yeah,
were.
so what we've done is we've added T-shirts to what we do. And so the theory is, and I still need to work out licensing with more artists, but in theory, if you see a painting here in the gallery, we could actually put it on a T-shirt for you.
Oh, cool.
So although you may not be able to afford the painting, you can wear it and help promote the artist and their artwork that way. So that's something that even just last week I launched 4 new designs of my trees that I'm known for the sculpture, but I've now turned that 2-dimensionally, much like my logo behind us. And now those are on T-shirts.
Oh my goodness, that's so exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's always
Yeah.
expanding and adapting and trying to find new markets and new people to engage with art.
For sure. Keeping it new and changing as art does, it's never the same.
No, it's always evolving and changing. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any new artists in the gallery?
Yeah, actually, there are always a handful of new artists that come in. One that I'm excited about actually is just over your shoulder. I don't know if it's picking it up on the camera, but his name is Paul Butvilla.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful.
And so with Paul, so what I try to do here in the gallery is it's all Canadian artists. When I opened, I had international artists, amazingly famous people that I had reached out to, like one of Disney's top animators. I was the only gallery in the world with his originals.
Wow.
Just because I reached out and asked. And there was another one out of the U.S. that I had met a couple of times and bought some of his sketches. I couldn't afford the $10,000 or $20,000 paintings, but I could afford the $400 original concept sketch. And so I brought some of his stuff in. He had illustrated the Lord of the Ring books, designed album covers for so many famous albums. And I was bringing that in, but the people of Grant Berg just weren't responding to it. And so although I was a nerd and excited, it wasn't finding the market. So I went strictly Canadian. And so with Paul, I was following him on Instagram and loving his work. And honestly, I felt it was very Laguna Beach in style. I've been to Laguna Beach. It's got its own art vibe. It's amazing, and I love it. And so anyway, I was liking his posts as I was seeing this amazing artwork. And then he sent me a message and he said, "Hey, Grant, I'd love to be in your gallery." I just assumed he was from Laguna Beach. So I said, "Actually, I'm sorry, Paul, but I only take artists that are Canadian." And he said, "I live in West Kelowna." And I said, "How fast can you get it here?" So he shipped me a whole bunch of artwork. And then about 5 or 6 weeks later, he sends me a message and he said, "Grant, I need to recall one of my paintings. I've just been picked up by galleries in Las Vegas, Hawaii, and Laguna Beach."
Oh my goodness.
And so it's great for me because he stuck with me, and the 3 water paintings you see behind, we'd sold a few, and he said, "Hey, Grant, can I replace these?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course." And he asked me what theme, and I said, "How about something with water? Because we've got waterfalls, we've got all kinds of different water as an accent." Well, he sent these pure water pieces, and they're outstanding. And so the feedback that we get on his artwork is amazing.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. I believe I would have said this last year when I came in, but I love art. I cannot do any of it, like with my hands, painting, drawing, not my strong suit. So I just stand in awe of the talent that people possess and are able to execute on a piece of paper or on a canvas or whatever it is. It's outstanding. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but we'll go on a little tour later, so you'll definitely get to see. Coming back to more of your art though, what mediums do you use, or what mediums are your favorite to use?
Well, what I'm best known for is my stone tree sculptures. And I can't produce at the level that I used to. My shoulder literally is wearing out. I was just at the doctor about 3 weeks ago because my shoulder hurts 24/7. So every stone tree that I do is hand polished. And so I was doing an estimate that every square inch of that rock using wet dry sandpaper has been rubbed well over 1,000 times. Every square inch. So throughout it all, there's 30 to 40,000 shoulder movements of the hand polishing. And so I'm due to get some cortisone shots, and maybe that'll fix things and I can get back to it. So that's my favorite. But again, out of necessity, I need to adapt and continue to change. And so part of that is, again, the story, where we will use my style of art to tell the story in the book. Also, again, adapting to T-shirts and different things like that. So I've developed my own distinct style, and now it's time to start branching that out. One of the things that I want to do, and this is just simple long-term thinking or medium-term thinking, is the characters in the books will be done in the traditional woodlands indigenous style. And I want to make those into little teddy bears or have them made. Because you don't see indigenous, like you can go to different galleries or different stores and they will have bison or deer or different things like that, but not in that specific indigenous style. So that's another way that once we develop this, it will expand the knowledge and appreciation of that woodland style of art to children and to families.
Are you just constantly thinking of like new things to do and
well, again, it's all out of necessity.
Oh yes. Okay.
So this is a business, and how do I continue to generate revenue? And so as part of the tours, say in theory I get 15 people and I charge $10 per person. So it's $150. That doesn't move the needle for the gallery at the end of the month. So how do I find different ways to generate revenue from those tours? So one of them could be the sale of books, if I'm doing the children's story, or through the sale of little teddy bears. And then from there expand that out and wholesale them across the province or across the country. And then with my sculpture, the idea would be, again, that I have originals, but also some bronzes, where if somebody's engaged in that and wants some, then they can purchase that. So again, it's all about expanding revenue to keep this business viable so that I can keep it going.
And keep it accessible for people and
Yeah.
constantly be branching out. That
Yeah.
makes sense. You were mentioning your style. How would you describe your style of art? I know it might be difficult in words.
I'm actually trying to recall, and I always try to avoid name dropping, but in this case I will. I'd received a phone call from one of Canada's most famous artists, and I may have mentioned this last year, but his name is Douglas Copeland. And Doug phoned me out of the blue. I was working on a sculpture in my yard, and we got to chatting, and he basically had said that nobody is doing what I'm doing, and that excited him. So Doug wrote the book Generation X and popularized that term Generation X globally. Although he didn't invent it, that is one of his things that he's contributed to pop culture. He's also one of Canada's top artists. So if you go to Vancouver, it's called Digital Orca. It's that giant orca sculpture by the Olympic Flame. He did the Terry Fox Memorial outside BC Place and a number of significant sculpture across Canada. So he was doing research and kept coming across my sculpture. So he's bought 3. But in his words, it was something like distinctly unique with strong Indigenous lines. So you could tell that there was an Indigenous flavor to it, but it wasn't solely cliche, for lack of a better word. It was something that was quite unique to me. And I tried, at the time, according to Google, there was nobody else doing stone trees anywhere in the world. And I did a couple of shows in the Calgary area. Now you can't go into a gallery around Calgary or Banff or wherever and not see somebody doing trees. And the trees that they're doing was a style that I had started with, but then I've constantly evolved into something that I feel is quite exciting. So I like to think that I influenced that trend.
How did you develop your style?
I love flow and lines. I am a fan of architecture and art. And so here in Grant Berg, you talk about how Grant Berg may have influenced me. We have the architecture of Douglas Cardinal, including the Grant Berg, well, it used to be the Grant Berg Regional College. Now it's called Northwestern Polytechnic. Douglas Cardinal was a Blackfoot architect from here in Alberta. And he has designed so many outstanding buildings with beautiful curves and beautiful space. The college here in Grant Berg was his first major project. And actually the chairs that we're sitting on were the original chairs in the college theater, which Cardinal actually says to this day is his best design ever.
Oh, wow.
And so these are the original theater chairs. They were, there was a renovation done, and the chairs were actually made a little bit wider as we all grow. So with Cardinal, there's his work. And he went on to do the Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. It's a Smithsonian museum on the mall in Washington, D.C. I've been there. It's an outstanding building, so I've kind of seen the bookends. But even in Ottawa, there's well, just across the river from Ottawa, he's done a major Canadian museum there. And so I love his flow and his lines. But then you've also got artists like Alex Janvier. They call themselves Janvier from Cold Lake. He's got great flow in his. So it's all about movement, flow, very natural, not bulky or strong in that way. And so I try to use that energy, I guess, and put that into my trees.
What advice would you have for aspiring artists who are maybe trying to develop their style of art?
Well, it's interesting because I was doing all kinds of things. Although I loved doing the trees, it was probably about a third of what I was doing. I was really trying to focus on negative space within stone sculpture, but also the intangibles. So like I was carving clouds, stuff that you can't touch, again, but out of irony, this is rock. And how do you make rock fluffy? Or even thoughts, like did one of a blizzard and the north wind and different things like that. So I was playing a lot with that. And again, in the conversation with Doug, he basically said, Grant, you need someone to edit you, and I'm going to be that guy. And so I said, well, Doug's a busy guy. I may not ever get him back on the phone again, so let's start lesson number 1 today. And so what's lesson number 1? And he said, focus on the trees. And I go, Doug, I don't want to be the tree guy. And he said, be the tree guy. It'll put your kids through college. Now, none of my kids went to college, so but regardless.
They could have.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I did. Is if a guy like Doug Copeland is picking up the phone, telling me to focus on the trees, I'm going to do that. And that's what I've done, and it's been quite successful.
Why do you think art is important in our society?
Here's a story, and at the risk of repeating myself. When I grew up, it was in small town Alberta. I grew up in Tofield. We had 2 paintings in our house. One was a typical furniture store, knife-painted mountain scene over the couch, and the other one was a black velvet nude that my dad literally had hanging in his home till he passed away. That was all that we had for art surrounding us. When I was 14 years old, I went through some pretty serious medical issues where I was in the hospital for a year and at 6 major surgeries, heading into, I can't remember, it was surgery 4 or 5. I actually said goodbye to my family because we didn't know if I'd live through the day. On the 4th surgery of the 6, they took my kidney out because it was kidney related. And they essentially kept me in what they called a drug-induced coma for 4 or 5 days. I don't recall exactly how many. So the thing was, although they had me heavily medicated and physically I couldn't respond, mentally I was awake and aware of everything that was happening in the room. I could tell who was in, who was out. I just wasn't able to respond. And so in the hospital, my bed headboard backed onto what was called the teen room. And so they would turn the music on at about 8 in the morning and turn it off at 10 at night. And so my mind latched onto that music, and it rode it like a roller coaster. And that mentally saved me from being trapped in my mind with nowhere to go. The music freed me from my situation. And then, when I was able to get up and walk, I would walk the hallways of the hospital, and I would look at the art, and I would stand and stare into each painting, and I would get lost in that artist's world through their eyes. And again, it was escape from my reality into the reality and the mind and the creativity of an artist. And when I ran out of artwork on my floor, I started going to every floor in the hospital and getting lost in their artwork. And so as I look back, 2 things. What could have been the absolute darkest moments of my life are filled with highlights of music and art, to the point that I did 29 years in broadcasting, bringing people music, and now 8 years of a gallery bringing people art. So as we go through life and we have struggles, art saves the soul.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. The gallery that you've had for 8 years now, where do you hope to see it 8 years in the future?
Ironically, I was thinking of that today. And not in preparation for this interview, but rather how things evolve and how things change and how you have to adapt in order to survive. And I believe that I will always have a gallery, but how it will look, I don't know. Right now I have 55 artists. It wouldn't surprise me that in a few years, it's down to 25 or 30. And a major focus of that will continue to be what I create. I've been fortunate that at the end of each year I run reports to see who my best-selling artists are, and I've got some of the top artists in Western Canada, including, say, Rod Charlesworth that's on this back wall here. Very well-known Western Canadian artist. But year after year, my artwork continues to be one of the best revenue generators. And so I need to focus more on that, which I've mentioned that I am doing and creating in different ways. I want to get more into public sculpture. And now that I've got 5 here in Grant Berg, I'd love to expand that. And so managing, again, 25, 30 artists will be easier than 55 and allow me to pursue other things. I want to really focus on storytelling and tours as well. I fell into, quite by accident, a lovely accident, through Indigenous Tourism Alberta and Indigenous Tourism Canada. When I opened, I didn't necessarily see the gallery as a tourist destination. However, when I travel, visiting galleries is a big part of what I do. And so I did put the gallery on TripAdvisor and a few other travel sites just because. And then one day I decided to check TripAdvisor, see how things were going. And at the time, my gallery in Grant Berg was the number 2 thing to do when you visit Grant Berg. But also, I was ranked the number 1 commercial gallery in all of Alberta. So I was ahead of anybody in Banff, Canmore, Calgary, wherever. My little gallery in Grant Berg was number 1 ranked on TripAdvisor. It's since fallen, but I wanted to take that and leverage it. And so what I decided to do is I wanted to join Indigenous Tourism Alberta. And at the time, the company was owned 50% by me, 50% by my wife. And she's not Indigenous, but in order to have a membership in Indigenous Tourism Alberta, it has to be 51% or more. So we went back to the lawyers and the accountants and spent a few $1,000s to convert the business so that it was 54% for me, 46% for my wife. And we changed that January 1st, 2020. Of course, March 15th, 2020, COVID hits. And it was an interesting shift for me. I am a person, one fundamental flaw that I have or had is I hate asking for help. I like to do things strong and independently, and I know that that's a character flaw. When COVID hit, I literally said out loud to the universe, if somebody offers help, swallow your pride and take it. That's the only way you're going to get through this. And so then I started applying for grants through Indigenous Tourism Alberta as a brand new member because they wanted the tourism industry to survive, specifically Indigenous tourism, through COVID. And there was amazing opportunities with that. And it absolutely helped us survive, without a doubt. And now that we've expanded and members of Indigenous Tourism Canada, and they've got a program called the Original. And so we're members in that now, and they've got quite a few thresholds that you have to meet in order to do that. And so we've met that. And I want to continue to honor what they have done to help me by helping them and promote Indigenous culture and Indigenous storytelling. So here in my gallery, it's not exclusively Indigenous. We're not a big enough market for me to exclusively do that. But it does have a strong presence within the gallery.
Final question. We asked this last year, but we ask this all the time because it's our favorite question to ask. What would you say, it can be the same as last year or different, is the best piece of advice you've received throughout your life?
I had a really different answer last year. I don't even remember what my answer was, but I know that it caught you off guard a bit. One of the pieces of advice that I hold true to myself, and I'm sure somebody has said this or read it somewhere, but honestly, it's being true to yourself and being your authentic self. Because there is only one of you in the universe, in the world, so you might as well be that one rather than copying someone else because they already exist. And so I go through my life being distinctly me, for better or worse. And as I say on the opening page of my book, I like my brain. I love spending time in there and exploring and having fun and thoughts and ideas. And so with that, I am distinctly me, and with that, I've been able to develop my own distinct brand and style that is my own. And it's been successful for me. So that's what I continue to do. I continue to have confidence. Not everybody sees what I'm after or sees my vision, but I have it, and to me it's clear, and so I pursue that a lot. Just being my authentic self without barriers.
Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us. I think now, if you are open to it, we can explore the gallery a little bit, maybe see some of your favorite pieces.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect.
Let's look at some art.
Wonderful. Well, what we have behind us is an exhibition that we opened. And actually, this is really the first exhibition that we've done in the 4 years we've been here. We used to do one every month in our previous location. Moving here, COVID hit. Of course, we couldn't have group gatherings. And so we just stopped doing full exhibitions. But with this one, I saw Ed doing this body of work. And Ed's a former art instructor at the college here in Grant Berg. He's since retired. And I thought this would make a fun introductory show to us getting back into that. And now we won't have 12 a year, but we might have 7 or 8. And so this is Ed's work of different mountainscapes influenced by famous artists that he's loved in the past. And with that, Ed, one of the things that he did teach, besides art, was art history. So he's got this background, and everyone has the influence in it. And so this is our first introduction back into doing exhibitions with Ed Bader. With Branko Marjanovic. Branko, this painting here right now is my favorite in the gallery.
Stunning.
So one of the things that as I'd mentioned, it's all Canadian. And to me, it's important as a Canadian that we have an identity of our own. With a massive influx of information and pop culture from the U.S., it's still important to have a Canadian identity, whether we have it in music or art. But one of the things that fascinates me about people is when they're not born in Canada, but come to Canada and become Canadians, they see Canada through a different lens that we do, and that excites me. So Branko was born in Yugoslavia. And the story that he tells is that when he was 14 years old, his dad was an engineer, and they're living in Yugoslavia, and they're doing their back-to-school shopping in Venice, Italy. And it was in Venice that he said he saw a poster of the most beautiful place on earth. And it was actually a poster of Spirit Island and Jasper. So he bought it and said, one day I'm going to paint this. And so anyway, he grows up, he gets married, he's now an engineer, and Yugoslavia goes through a devastating war. And he gets picked up as a refugee to come to Canada, first into Saskatchewan, and then into Calgary. And so now he's roughly my age, but he paints our Rocky Mountains with this romanticized European view that he's had since he's been 14. And you could see the influence of the structural engineer in him by the strength of the mountains and the structure. But there's color, there's vibrancy. And so right now, Moraine Lake Walk is my favorite painting in the gallery. I just love the red in the mountains and how it glows. So one of the things you won't find a lot of photorealistic art in my gallery. One of the things that I connect with is when an artist sees something, puts it through their soul and their experience and puts it back out. To me, that's what art is. Now, again, to do something photorealistic in many ways takes exceptional talent that I can't even imagine. But for me, what touches me and touches my soul is when it's been through the soul of an artist and is reproduced in a specific way. And so when Branko paints this, I know his passion and his love for this country. Not only because he initially found it beautiful, but because it gave him a second chance at life. And so he celebrates it differently than you and I do because we grew up with it.
It's interesting you say vibrancy, because that's exactly what I thought when I saw this piece. It just really stands out to me. And I also find it really interesting he said that about Jasper, because that's the second time I've heard that from someone who's originally from Europe, being Jasper the most beautiful place in the world. But obviously we see it a bit differently because we've been so used to it.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful seeing it, how you're explaining it through someone else's soul and someone else's eyes, and just the weight that it can carry in a different way. It's really empowering. Yeah.
And this is kind of a funky piece. I don't know how this is going to show up on your video, probably flashing and different things, but it's a constant light to the naked eye. It's from Jim Fisher. Jim's quite an eccentric guy here from Grant Berg. Used to work in the glass industry. We've got some really fun pieces from Jim. Suzanne Sambo, local artist, a few years back, finished first place in, what's her group called? Regardless, it was first place in a national competition of over 500 artists. She's local from the Grant Berg area, and in the coming weeks, she will have her artwork featured on 2 wine bottles, and we're going to have an opening here in the gallery to do that.
That's so exciting.
It is, yeah. Yeah, and then we've got Corey Fuhr. Corey's work has been purchased by the Vancouver Olympics, amongst others. From what I understand, it's in 2 movies over time. Just really cool stuff. Steve Coffey, I mentioned, one of my favorite artists. To me, he's the Canadian Van Gogh. Rather than Van Gogh's, olive trees on the Spanish countryside, these are Canadian countryside paintings. And again, help tell that Canadian story through passion, through the brushstrokes. Again, cool thing with Steve, not only is a painter, but he's a musician. He has about 10 CDs out. Wow. And his wife is the former lead dancer for the Alberta Ballet. So they understand music and flow and energy. And it really comes through in Steve's paintings. Steve is our best-selling artist.
I love that it's like not mountains. I love that it's just kind of a flat plane and you can kind of focus on the clouds.
And the texture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you will see that where, again, there is a mix here in the gallery of different landscapes from across Alberta and across Canada. Heather Pant, another Calgary-based artist. And so she was born in Chicago, went to school in Phoenix. So you go from an urban jungle of Chicago to a desert in Phoenix. Her husband Mel's from Calgary. They get to Calgary. And so she, again, very similarly, sees Canada through a different perspective. And so she sees this vibrancy and energy that we take for granted. And it comes out in her artwork. And so this is new, the t-shirts. And so with that, what we're doing is we're asking artists, can we put your artwork on t-shirts? And so it's going relatively well. It hasn't been my sole focus, and I need to put more focus into it. But one of the things is that I'd mentioned is putting my tree designs onto t-shirts. And so, here's a couple of designs. And so expanding that, because again, my shoulder's wearing out, but also if I've developed a specific and unique style, I need to take better advantage of that. And so there's some. I know this is a different pattern here. So far, working with my graphic designer, Doug, we've got, a couple of different designs. John Parnell, who actually one of my favorite artists of all time. Wow. Sadly, he passed away from Parkinson's disease about 2 years ago, Calgary-based artist. But when I was in his studio, many years before I had the gallery, I just felt that I was in the presence of a genius. And so when I opened up my gallery, he was high on my list. And so we got his artwork, and it was an interesting progression. As his Parkinson's disease advanced, his style changed. So that's another story that I love to tell, is from beginning to end of John's story. Through his wife Patricia, we've again got licensing to do his work. But also, again, from a touristy standpoint, I talked about the Cardinal Theatre at the college. So this is what they call the Cardinal. It went through a major expansion a few years ago using a local architect, but everything in this angle is Douglas Cardinal. Spectacular building with great energy. But also, too, we've got Miranda Lane, an Indigenous artist from the High Level area, and her designs. And so, to me, that's important, is finding new revenue streams for artists and new ways to introduce their artwork to the world. So I talked about Paul Budvilla, the new artist. So these are some of Paul's, these are paintings, they're airbrush.
Wow.
And they are breathtaking. So he asked me, what would you like, Grant? And I said, well, something with water. And as we've been seeing, there's waterfalls, there's lakes. So this is what Paul sent me for the water themes.
And these are airbrush as well?
Yes, they are. Although he does a lot with his regular brush. Super talented guy. And
I can't get over how much like that looks like a paint.
Yeah, a picture of.
Like I walked in, and I was like, oh, that's such a pretty picture. Like, dang.
Yeah.
Like that.
And it's one of the things that I love is when you see a painting and you connect with it, it takes you back to different memories. And so when I see these two paintings from Paul, I think back to when I was water skiing and you're down and you're out there on the lake by yourself with a very unique view of the world until the boat swings back around, or out on different holidays and snorkeling.
Oh, yeah.
And so to me, this one here reminds me of snorkeling in the Caribbean.
That's so
Again,
interesting, yeah.
it's great where art can take you. Emily Lozeron is another one of our very popular artists. She's had 2 articles written about her artwork in U.S. magazines, yet she's from here in the Grand Prairie area. It's her own distinct style. These are mostly Jasper. Well, there's Lake Louise. That's the Jasper area, but that one is from Grand Prairie. And that one here, she actually painted quite literally where you're standing.
Really?
So she asked, hey, Grant, can I do some live painting in the gallery? Of course. And so she set up in this area and did that painting here. So again, just reminds me of road trips when I was a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were talking about that. We were like, we feel like we know exactly what spot that is.
Yeah. And I've actually done that with a few artists where they will come up with something that is quite unique. And I love sharing where it is on a map in my mind. And then I'll take you over to one specifically. Candace Sanderson is a local wood sculptor. She actually works at the college in their arts department, but not as an instructor, but in helping students learn about tools and different things like that. So Candace, in the summer, has property in near Vancouver Island, Gabriola Island, I believe, and does a lot of sculpture there. Now with this, there's a hill when you're driving from Canmore to Calgary, and the highway goes like this. And I said, is that this spot? And she goes, no. So I took her to Google Earth, and she was shocked at how close this was, including the trees and the angles and the slope and everything, to what was actually in the real world. Now with these pieces, what Candace wanted to do is, they're wood trees, and she's, said she's influenced by my trees. But with that, she wanted to take this plywood, which started out as a tree, and give it back as a tree to the universe. And so that's what these are, that's her giving back the tree to a tree. So one of our most popular artists, we've actually got 3 artists that are so amazing at working with social media. I'll say one is Robbie Craig. One is Glenn Ronald, but then there is also Jeff Dillon, and this is one of Jeff's. So I had a gallery in Kananaskis, had to close it during COVID, never did reopen it. But with Jeff's work, we couldn't keep it on the walls. It was so popular. And quite literally, in order to keep us in stock, he was pulling paintings off his wall that he had planned on keeping to keep us going. So this one here is a breathtaking piece of Jeff's. Jeff has his own unique style. And he's actually had his artwork featured on beer cans, won 2 national or international competitions.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so his work is amazing. And we're the only gallery in Western Canada with his artwork. And what's amazing to me is I can attract some of these amazing artists because I'm also an artist. And I get where they're coming from. And so Jeff is one of those. And last summer, I had a lady come in from Vancouver, and she looks at the painting and she goes, "Is that a Jeff Dillon?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And she goes, "I have to come to I'm from Vancouver. I have to come to Grande Prairie to see original Jeff Dillons." Yes, you do. We've been so fortunate in so many ways to get the quality of artists that we do, and punch well above our weight. But I also think that goes back to, again, on TripAdvisor. When people come in from other places and see the quality of art that we have, they're floored. I don't think that they have the expectation that a place in Grande Prairie would have this level of art.
And I think like the diversity of art you have as well, coming from so many different artists and different mediums of art, there's really something for everyone.
And that's the goal, because realistically, we're the only commercial gallery north of Edmonton. So we serve quite a large area. But also, too, I don't want people to leave disappointed. So I try to have enough diversity that when you come in, you find a connection with something. And so you may not have connected with 35 of our artists, but if you've connected with 3, those are the 3 that you'll remember, and that's the experience you'll leave with. So another exciting artist that I can't believe that we're connected to, but I love it. So Larry Reese was born in Wisconsin. And as a young guy went to India and learned how to play the sitar. And one of his instructors, not his only instructor, but one of his instructors was Ravi Shankar, who taught George Harrison of the Beatles how to play the sitar.
Oh, wow.
And also he's the father of Norah Jones, the singer. So you have to be a bit of a music nerd to know this, but in the 70s there was a British band called Procol Harum, and they did an album with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra that still gets played to this day on classic rock radio. And Larry on his sitar was the opening act for that. So he's, just touching music history. Then from there, Larry became an actor and taught acting at Red Deer College. And so anytime a major movie production would come into Alberta, Larry would often get a call. And he would get one of the middle roles. So he wasn't the star, but he wasn't an extra either. He had quite a few lines and credited role. And so he has acted in 2 Academy Award-winning Best Picture movies. Yeah, and actually even his daughter right now is on Law and Order as an actress. Wow. So now, in Larry's retirement, he's a painter.
So he does everything.
Yeah, he actually did a documentary on creativity that he shared with me. And so Larry does 2 styles. One is a style that I have 8 other artists doing. So it would be redundant to bring that in. But with this, what Larry does, this is on panel.
Oh, wow.
But he takes the wood grain and he finds a pattern in it. And then he will bring that pattern to life into his painting. So as I spin this around, you can see the knot and how he's created the different scape using the grain and the wood to lead the painting.
Yeah.
And so Larry's sister lives here in Grande Prairie, and that's how I met him. And so, again, as far as I know, this is the only gallery that Larry's in Might be another one in Central Alberta, but again, outstanding artists doing amazing work with spectacular resumes that I just love working with. I think Larry's actually coming into Grande Prairie next week to visit his sister, and so we're gonna sit down and just have a great old catch up. And so for me, I love being part of everyone's story. And so as we go through life and we meet people that have helped us along the way, we remember that. And so one of the things that's important to me, or that I enjoy, is being part of people's story. And again, you guys doing this video helps me tell their story. And ultimately that becomes part of your story too.
Yeah, and the effect that this has on our story, like, again, just reiterating kind of what I was saying on the chairs, but like your book and all the stories that you share and the complete different works of art that we saw last year. And it's just like, and the Elton John
the record player.
the record player, and it's like stories that I tell people of, like, I saw that, like, we spoke, and like just all the stories that you have and all the wisdom that you've shared with us, and even through the eyes of other people. Like, I'm rambling, but I'm just trying to say thank you.
And it is my pleasure, and that's what I love to do, is I love to tell stories, and they don't have to be my story, because everyone has amazing stories. And so, as restating, I'm telling Larry's story, you're telling my story and Larry's story through this, so thank you.
Hey everyone!
Hello.
We just finished up at the Grant Berg Gallery, and oh my goodness, art is so pretty.
Like always, he's always such a good interviewee.
And so many great stories to share. We always learn so much and are just blown away by everything that he can share with us.
And he's always so, like, willing to share with us, which we also appreciate a lot. So
He's a great eye for work, like artwork and artists as well. Like the type of work he has there, it's amazing. Like, please check out his website if you can. Buy something if you can. If I could, I would.
I got
a
t-shirts.
shirt.
Yeah.
Let's show.
Yes, Rochelle will show you the t-shirts that we
Got the
purchased.
shirt.
This is the one that she got. Ooh,
The story behind it is adorable.
It's so cute.
I will cry. And then Bridget, I'm showing yours as well.
Please do.
What Bridget got.
So
see
cool. So pretty.
Perfect.
So yeah, they have wearable art now. Not only art that can hang
check
on
it
walls and all that jazz, you can wear your art. Or there were coloring books and mittens and puzzles and
It was really cute.
so much fun
Like
stuff.
number stickers that were different animals. I was looking at, like, that's so
Did you
fun.
mention the color books as well? I think you did.
Yeah, I
There.
did. But
Yes.
yeah,
Did you mention the puzzles?
yes, I did.
Perfect. Wow, I guess we're not on the same page.
Nobody listens to me, but it's okay.
Fine.
Point is, everything is amazing. Go check it out. Look online.
Super fun. Grab a coffee, walk around. Look
It's
at all the
awesome.
beautiful art. Buy a shirt.
Yeah.
Wear it home. You know?
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.